Hey guys, welcome to the Challenge Podcast. I'm Coach Steve.
And I'm Coach Nick, and we're going to be talking about everything fitness, health, and the challenge.
Let's get on with the show.
What's up guys, Coach Steve here and welcome back to another episode of the Coach's Corner. In today's episode, I'm joined with our co-host, Coach Nick. Nick, how are we doing today?
I'm really well, thanks, Coach Steve. It's a beautiful sunny day in Melbourne. I have got my steps. I have trained. Everything is A1. How about you?
Nick, kicking all the goals today. Today was actually quite chilly this morning. So I had to rug up a little bit and now the sun's out. So it's just a classic Melbourne day, I reckon.
Yeah, true. Sun's out, guns out.
Sun's out, guns out. But look, Nick, exciting episode today because we have hit the unlucky number 13. Episode 13. And I need to give another public apology out there because last week I called the episode of the Coach's Corner episode number 11, where the week before was episode number 11, so it should be number 12. So we skipped number 12, the dozen, and went straight to 13. So we currently have two episode number 11s of the Coach's Corner. Episode number 12 is non-existent, and then episode number 13 is here. So we made it. Episode number 13. Exciting times, Nick.
That's crazy and so funny. You don't usually make errors like that, so it must be the lack of sleep.
Yeah, look, I need to reflect on that mistake and we move on, right? That's what we do. Mm-hmm. Now, Nick, before we jump into the true crux of the Coach's Corner where we offer our tip of the week, tell me, how's your training coming along?
Oh, it's really good. It's just the best ever. I love it. But I have nothing to see here. There's still nothing exciting. It's just all about just getting it done. But I love it. It's my whole world, except for my bunnies and children and
those things.
Yeah. How about you?
It's tracking along nicely. I've just moved into my next phase of training. So I run on like mesocycles every 4 weeks, and I kind of just change up my program just ever so slightly. Instead of like a barbell bicep curl, I might do a dumbbell bicep curl. That type of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit in my Coach's Corner segment, but just experimenting with a few different exercises and just making the most out of the resources I have in my own garage, because I don't train in a commercial gym right now. I train in a garage. So trying to do certain exercises and like, maybe I'll just put my foot here up against the brick wall and then my arm here and I can kind of do this. And actually this is a really nice way to hit my shoulders or my pecs or my back. So it's been interesting, but it's one of those. If I film myself and put myself online, I'll probably look like the stupidest person going around. But it's been a fun little exploration the past couple of weeks. It's been good.
I think you'd fit in very well on Instagram, to be honest with you. I don't think you'd look any different to anyone else that's on there.
That's true. But I don't know some of the weird and wacky stuff I've been trying to do. But it's okay. It's okay. We digress. Yeah. But Nick, let's jump into it. Move into the Coach's Corner, offering our tip of the week. Take us away, Nick. What advice do you have for us this week?
All right. So my advice, I don't think it's going to be very controversial. I don't think it's going to be boxing ring situation, but I'm sure that you'll have something to add. But I'm just going to talk about encouraging your loved ones, particularly around Mother's Day, and whether you have a mum or you are a mum, or even if you don't, then I'll make it a bit broader and say your loved ones, because you might be a mum and you might be encouraging your kids. There are so many ways to look at this. It could be let's just talk about it in terms of encouraging a loved one to get into fitness. So you are the preacher and they are the people that go, what are they called? Oh my gosh, congregation. Thank you, my brain. So the fitness congregation. So you've discovered your love of fitness. You have discovered your love of training. You want to share it. You want to show people how good you feel. You want them to feel the same way. How can you encourage a loved one to get into fitness? It can actually be like a bit of a delicate matter, because just say that, like, for example, just say for Mother's Day, you gave your mum some sneakers or something and you said, I really want you to start walking. You've got to say it in a way where they don't get a little bit offended. So you firstly got to be a little bit tactful. But I reckon doing something like that, a nice present, is a really good way to get started, because you can always give someone something like a hat or some sunnies or something like that. And you can say, let's start walking together so we can hang out more, that kind of a thing. But yeah, some tips to help with this, and it can be anyone in your household, because we know how difficult it can be when you've got that resistance. So it's better to get people on your side. So because if you've got someone who's trying to sort of say to you, don't worry about it, that's very hard. Sometimes you can get tempted to not do it. So I think leading by example is really important. So for the last, I reckon, it's close to 20 years now, I've been getting up at very early, and I don't know whether Shane notices or not. Sometimes he says, oh, you woke me up. And I'm like, it's always been the case. You just have forgotten. But it has sunk in a little bit, because occasionally he'll say, oh, it's so good that you get up and you've got everything done. And then on the weekends, he kind of follows my lead and we do stuff together. And he comes on walks with me and stuff, and I force him to. So I lead by example. I live and breathe it, as we know. And I think even though Shane he marches to the beat of his own drum, he can very much see that it's something that's beneficial. And so he's a night owl. I'm a morning person, but we do meet in the middle on the weekends and we go on walks, and that's where we discuss the future of our lives and what we're going to be doing. Now, my mum is the same as me, so she's just a mini me, because she's definitely very tiny. I don't know how she gave birth to me, but I obviously wasn't like this when she gave birth to me. But we walk together as well. And we've always done the Mother's Day run. Up until a few years ago, we did that. Obviously, I think with COVID, we did it as a walk with the kids, and it was a bit weird. So we haven't reinvested in that. We're doing something else this time. But that was a really good way for us to connect and do our run together. The next one is, find common interests. So you want to find stuff that you, just say you want your mum to do it. You want to find stuff that you both enjoy. So it could be a bike ride together, obviously not necessarily in the middle of the main road, but it could be on a nice track. You could hire bikes. So it doesn't have to be in the gym. That's the thing. It can be anywhere. And that's, say, my mum, she doesn't lift weights, believe it or not. She did not teach me about lifting weights. I think she's a little bit scared of it, but she's very supportive of me doing it. But she will come for walks with me till the cows come home. We'll do all sorts of walks. So hiking's another one. Hiking, biking, swimming. Mum and I used to go swimming together. We would go, when I was training for the Ironman, we would go together to the pool, and she would do her laps, I would do my laps. So I think that communal idea of meeting someone, knowing that you've got to catch up with someone, is an amazing way to stay on track. Knowing that somebody's expecting you to pick them up or meet you somewhere is also really good for the gym, because you have to go. If you promise someone that you'll be there, you don't want to be that a-hole that cancels. It feels terrible. And start small. So that's what I've done with Shane, and Shane is currently on a walk without me, which is good, fantastic. But we started off with a small bit of the block, and now we do a walk that takes us an hour and a half, and it does go past a lovely bakery. So if Shane needs to have a pasty on the way, he can. This is, Shane is Shane. Shane's awesome. He's fit and everything like that, but he doesn't take it as seriously as I do. So he's got his snack if he needs his snack. Small achievable goals. We sometimes say with the kids, even though they're reasonably fit, but they don't really like walking with mum. So it'll be a 10-minute walk to the shop sometimes, just to get them out and about. But with people that don't do fitness at all, just that hit of endorphins, the way that it can make you feel, can kind of build your confidence and motivation to then start to introduce other things. Also, you don't want to be that a-hole. I keep saying a-hole, but you don't want to be that person that gets all smug and says, oh, well, you could only walk for this amount of time. You want to be supportive. You want to be supportive and encouraging of whatever they're doing that isn't just sitting there. So just because you can lift a million things and you're in the gym all the time doesn't mean you have to be that person that rubs it in other people's face. So it's really good to be encouraging. It's really good to say how amazing that you got out. How good does this feel? And encourage them to pay attention to how their body feels, because nobody ever usually says, oh, I wish I didn't go on that walk. Most people will say, I'm glad I went. A routine is really good. So mum and I, we walk without fail, about 3 or 4 times a week together. We have times. They're very early in the morning, and we go whether it's raining or not. We've got our raining plan, we've got ponchos, we've got all that sort of stuff, and we just do it. So that's our routine, and it works for both of us. So you've got to find something that works for both parties, and yeah, that's a way to also make sure that you keep it up. Otherwise, if it's inconvenient at all, it's going to drop off. So the accountability is really important. You can do stuff like challenges. I mean, we have that on the app anyway, but you can do step challenges with your devices. So that's another one, accountability, and you can send each other your stats and stuff. That's kind of cool. I don't really do that, but you can, and you can also set weekly check-ins for yourself. I know that some of our challenges do that. They will talk about their step count and they'll be accountable to each other. And just remember, like, if you are getting somebody into fitness for the first time, it's really important, as I said, to just be patient and understanding and not put all of your expectations and judgments upon them, because that's that fitness preaching that I've spoken about before. Just because something works for you doesn't mean that other people are going to like it. Like if Shane said to me, karate is the only way to get fit, and you have to come to karate with me, I would hate that. I respect karate, but I don't want to do karate. So we would have a bit of a clash there. So we have to find that common ground. And I think that's the way. And find something where you can also do that habit stacking, where you can socialize at the same time when you're first starting out. So time just passes quickly, and you'll find that they achieve things, and then you can kind of start to talk them into more and more. But by then, their health markers will have already improved if they're just sitting there usually. So then they'll want to get a little bit better just because they're starting to feel a little bit better. So they're my little tips. And with Mother's Day, if you do have a mum or you are one, or you celebrate anything to do with that, you could ask for something fitnessy, or you could give something fitnessy. It's a really good time. Sneakers, skipping rope, anything that's kind of nice, as long as you say that you'll do it with them, and the reason that you got it for them is because you want to hang out with them more.
Nick, I love it. I love it a lot. And I love that last point where you're saying, using fitness as a social tool, like a way to spend more time with people, especially your loved ones, and build and foster that relationship. Habit stacking, really powerful. I do agree that it's definitely on a spectrum, right? Like, you and I and most people listening to this, we are, diehard fitness people. Like we're deep in the trenches. And for health, we can achieve a good quality of health through very minimal amounts of, fitness, right? It could just be the physical activity guidelines in Australia, 150 minutes of activity throughout the week. Most of us do that, in a day. But, for some of us, could just be going for a short walk daily is enough to maintain some level of fitness, and meaning fitness defined as like the ability to do something. Yeah. So to increase our fitness, probably something as going for a walk is very low-hanging fruit, right? And depending on our loved one and what level they are, they might be at that really early stage of fitness where, they just want to start something. And I had a New Year's resolution this year, Nick, to facilitate more than I dictate, right? That was my resolution, to facilitate more than I dictate. And in the past, I've been known to, make things happen, through brute force, not physically, but I just kind of like push things along and get things done. Very much dictating, where it served me well this year to allow things to happen, to facilitate things to happen. That's in work and in social life and relationships and everything across the board. And if you think of it like that, where be a facilitator to help somebody get into fitness. And I definitely have this fitness identity, listening to this, you're like, well, yeah, Steve, you're the coach in the challenge. Yeah, you have a fitness identity. And people around me often come to me and say, oh, I want to get started. I don't know where to start. So in that facilitating hat, you might offer low-hanging fruit. Oh, come with me for a walk. I'm actually about to get my steps up. Or I'll meet you at the lake. We'll go for a walk. Walking is often a very low-hanging fruit, good place to start. And I've done that with friends. I've done that with family, helping them to get started. of course, those people who are already invested and they go, oh yeah, well, I'm pretty active. I go to the gym already, blah, blah, blah. I want to get into powerlifting, or I want to get into a physique sport like yourself, Nick. Okay, you're on the next rung. All right, come with me to the gym. Or like Shane, all right, we're going to go do some karate. I want to make my way through the stages of the belt system. Yeah, okay. So there's different levels of facilitation that we can play. And I think, I'm not saying that there's a duty, but, for some family members, if we truly love them and we all know they would benefit from some physical activity, they probably also know they would benefit from some physical activity. If you could help facilitate that, and that could just be an open invitation. It doesn't mean, hey, mum, you're coming for a walk with me. It's more of, hey, mum, would you like to come for a walk with me? They might be waiting for that opportunity to go, yeah, I do want to come with you. And you probably really foster that relationship. So really, really good advice, especially around Mother's Day. And if you haven't planned anything with Mother's Day, maybe your plan is to go for a walk with your mom. I think that's a really great one.
For sure. And if you are my mum, she might be listening. You never know. She gets, I'd love to share my text stream with her, because she'll just get me sending her the plan for the week. So I'm probably dictating, not facilitating. I'm like, okay, so we're going to meet at this street at this time on this day. And she just goes, okay.
Yep. No, I love it. I mean, there's always time. Please don't soundbite this, but there's always time for a dictator, right? But sometimes we'll be better to facilitate things.
A fitness dictator.
Oh gosh. Mm-hmm. No, love it, Nick. Love it. Nick, I would like to talk about the topic of what makes a good exercise. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, this actually stemmed from a conversation that I had in a new role that I've been having lately, Nick. So outside the challenge, I've been helping out at Fit College to teach Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. And it's been a really rewarding experience to educate, teach, and mentor the next generation of personal trainers. So this conversation that I'm talking about actually stemmed from a conversation I had with some of the Cert 4 in fitness students that I had just the other day. Now, for context, we were talking about programming. So we were designing a program and we're talking about certain exercises. And for this certain program, we were building it out as like a push and a pull kind of setup. So we're doing like a lower body push, a lower body pull, an upper body push, and an upper body pull. And that could be like a lower body push is like a squat, a lower body pull would be something like a deadlift, an upper body push would be like a push up or a bench press, and then an upper body pull would be like a row, right? So that's just how we can kind of like categorize exercises. So the conversation stemmed because I asked a student, we need a lower body push exercise or a knee dominant or a quad dominant exercise. What is an exercise that we can put there? And the student said a hack squat. Okay, awesome, great exercise. I was like, okay, cool. In the gym, they pointed at the hack squat machine, and it wasn't actually a true hack squat machine like you and I know of it, Nick. It was one of those kind of V squat machines. Yeah. So what a V squat machine is, it might look similar to a hack squat. A hack squat, the sled moves straight up and down, right? Whereas a V squat, the sled actually kind of like pivots and you end up kind of going into a bit more of like a deadlift shape, a bit more of like a low bar squat shape, because it kind of folds you in half. So this led to the conversation of me explaining and saying that maybe this machine wasn't as quad dominant as we thought. It might not have been in this category of the lower body push that we're looking for. It might be a little bit more glute dominant because the hips were moving a lot more than the knees. Okay. So then the student turned around and goes, oh, well, I've seen people face the other way on that machine. So what they described to me and then they showed me was how they faced this machine. So their face was up against the pad, their shoulders were underneath the shoulder pads, and then they completed the movement completely the opposite way of the movement was intended to do, right? And they're like, oh, would this be more knee dominant? I see people doing it this way. And that led into the conversation that we're having here today now in this podcast about what makes a good exercise. Because what I was suggested to these students was that certain machines, it's probably better to use the machine the way it was intended rather than trying to, completely change the machine. And, for that example, no, it wasn't a quad dominant exercise. And if anything, I think it's a little bit of a silly exercise. You kind of get your head into a weird position. You're kind of exposing yourself to the entire gym. It's just weird. It's not very stable. It's not very safe in general. And I say this with sense of caution, because I know there are some challengers out there who, like to complete this movement this way. So I'm not saying it's going to be a necessarily bad movement, because there's technically no such thing as a bad exercise. It's just maybe the wrong exercise at the wrong time for the wrong goal. Okay, so let's go through a little bit of a checklist about how we can determine what is a good exercise. Okay, so firstly, a good exercise, of course, is a safe exercise. Okay, something that, it's not going to cause immediate danger. And I mean danger more broadly. Like if you're going to do an exercise and the exercise involves, I don't know, playing with fire, probably not a safe exercise. If the exercise involves, balancing on a balancing beam with, weight over your head, okay, danger, danger. If you label an exercise not safe because of arbitrary biomechanic principles, like, you're doing a Jefferson curl, which is where you're rounding your back and lifting load, and you think that's dangerous because it's bad for your spine, I want you just to take a step back, question a couple of things or preconceived assumptions, because injuries happen when the load is too great. So if you were to build up capacity in those positions, you could withstand load under rounded backs or awkward arm, shoulder, joint positions if you had capacity in those areas, if you built them up, which is why you have gymnasts getting into crazy shapes, you have acrobats getting into crazy shapes, and athletes getting into weird and wacky shapes because they have strength in those shapes and positions, right? So safety is up there with one of the most important factors as, is this exercise good? Is it safe? Okay. Next, of course, is comfort, right? So talking about this V squat machine, if you're facing it and your face is up against the headrest, and when you complete the squat, you kind of have to, crank your neck back because your head has nowhere to go, it might not be the most comfortable thing going around, right? So we need to consider comfort and execution ability of this exercise, right? Next, we go into a little bit of technicals. So when we're completing an exercise, we need to determine, is this exercise specific to the goal that I'm trying to achieve? So does it hit the target muscle if we're aiming for a muscle? So, in this particular case, I was looking for a lower body push or a knee dominant lower body exercise or a quad dominant exercise. So was this exercise good for that category we're looking for? Probably not, right? It's like saying, I'm going to do a bench press to train my biceps. It might not be a good exercise to train your biceps, even though if you watch someone bench press, you might see their bicep is under tension. It might not be a good exercise for that muscle. Similarly, if you're not training the muscle, you might be training a joint or a movement or something similar. Again, asking those questions, is this specific? Is it reaching my goal? Now, in my garage gym, I'm trying a lot of weird and wacky exercises or movements or positions. You might not even call them exercises the way that they look, so that I can try to load my muscle in a certain position given the logistics that I have. So it might be good exercise because it's specific to the muscle, but then we can kind of go into the next stages where we need to question load ability. And what that means is how much tension can you actually apply to this muscle or this position, yeah? And this kind of is along the lines of that concept of raw stimulus magnitude, which I spoke about in a few weeks ago. And an example would be like a bench press. You can load that bench press, put 100 plus kilos on there, and it's quite easy to load it. But some other exercises, like if you were doing a kettlebell chest fly, in a weird position, it might be hard to load that exercise in the same way. So you've got to consider, can you load that exercise? And given this V squat position, the V squat actually started in a bottom position, not a top position. So Nick, you know what I'm talking about, where, when you go into like a leg press, your leg is almost like straight and you unhook it, and then you could lower it into the lower position and then push up into the high position. So this V squat actually started from the low position. So to get into the V squat, you have to kind of get into the bottom of the squat and then kind of stand up to kind of load it. So to load that exercise would be really difficult because you needed to get into the bottom of the squat, stand up and load it. So it's just tricky. So it might not have been a really great exercise. Next thing to consider, of course, is range of motion. So we want to train our muscle through as much range of motion as we can. And some exercises, we kind of limit our range of motion. Let's say you want to train your biceps and you are doing a barbell bicep curl. Your hands kind of start in front of your thighs and your elbows are bent. So your elbows aren't even straight. So you're kind of missing out on this whole like first portion of the bicep curl. And then when you go to complete the bicep curl, the barbell might hit your chest first, so you kind of don't get a full contraction. So in terms of range of motion, that might not be a really great exercise when you compare it to another exercise where you can train the bicep in a greater range of motion. So some things to consider. And then finally, of course, is probably the most technical one, which is stability aspects of it. So when we complete it, especially a machine exercise, the way it's meant to be completed, it's usually highly stable. Take a leg press, strap yourself in and push, right? Take this V squat, you've got the backrest behind you, you've got the headrest, you've got the shoulder pads, and you can go through that kind of folding squat, V squat motion. Whereas if you face the other way, you've lost all that stability because you don't have the backrest or the headrest, you just got the shoulder pads, and everything's a little bit like awkward because it's not designed to be used that way. The same way as some folk who use the leg press and they might try to face the pads. I've seen people try to do that and try to do a kickback on the leg press. That's weird. Or try to lie on it in a sideline position. Nick, you've seen those, and they kind of got popular in the booty scene where, they try to lay on their side on the leg press and try to, do this like side kick. You've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing. We lose a lot of stability that comes from the leg press because we're now on our side. So it may not be effective at recruiting that muscle, and then it affects loadability, specificity, and then even the safety of that exercise as well. So as a little bit of a checklist to consider, when you're choosing exercises, is this a good exercise? I want you to remember that there's no such thing as a bad exercise unless it's danger, danger, danger. It might just be the wrong exercise at the wrong time, maybe for the wrong person. Because even some of the examples I gave, it might be relevant in a certain use case. Like let's say my V squat example, that might be really relevant if you had a specific outcome. Like maybe you had a sports specific outcome, you were playing rugby and you wanted to improve the scrum and you wanted to be in a slightly unstable position with the shoulder pads and trying to press and create force that way. Okay, maybe you can create that rationale. However, for most of us in the challenge, when we're trying to complete exercises with the goal to build muscle, develop movement patterns, develop strength, that might not have been a really great exercise to do. So most of the exercises on our programs are chosen for the purpose of the challenge. And you might find some other weird and wacky exercises on places like Instagram. And it's really up to you to go through a bit of a rationale and say, is this a good exercise for me? And hey, it can be a great exercise for you as long as there's a bit of rationale behind it. And you might find some of the more popular exercises are popular for a reason, Nick.
Yeah. I also think there's also the other thing about best utilization of time.
Oh yeah, good one.
No one's got a million years to experiment with the fancy ones when there's other ones like an RDL would be just as good. Anyway, I'm just saying, but maybe I can come and be a special guest at your lecture.
No, I love that.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I think that really talks about the maybe a point that I might not have spoken about, Nick, was like how easy it is to actually set up, right? And if you, and I've done this before, Nick, where I might experiment with like resistance bands. So I might try to do like a resistance band loaded Bulgarian split squat or something. So I'm trying to get the band over my foot, put my foot down, get the band maybe over my shoulder, and then get the back foot on the bench, and then like try to find a bit of balance, and then maybe try to hold a dumbbell at the same time. It takes me like a minute to get into the position to do the exercise. And then I do the exercise for a minute, and then it takes me a minute to get out of the exercise, right? So it takes me 3 minutes to complete this exercise, and I've only been exercising for 1 minute, right? So, and that's only one leg, and then I'm going to do the other leg. So like sometimes exercises get really complex. It takes you like a few years to get in there. And maybe one example, which is from a popular exercise, is something like a glute raise or a glute thrust or a hip thrust, where it takes you a little bit of time to lay down or sit down and get the bar over your hips and get yourself into position. So it takes you like a couple of minutes or seconds to kind of get ready. And you compare that to, let's say, a dumbbell curl, grab the dumbbells and curl, like it's really easy to get into that position. So that's also something to consider as well, just kind of how complex it may become.
Yeah, and hogging the gym. Like if you're using a leg press for an upside down single leg something, and it's people are going to get a bit pissed off because they're going to be like, well, you got to still do the other leg and you're upside down and I'm worried about you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and maybe a classic one is like doing curls on the squat rack, right? You've seen people that I mean, it's a little bit of a meme now, so you don't see many people do it. But, if you want to use the squat rack to squat and someone's doing bicep curls on it, you might be like, come on, dude, like, can I use it the way it's meant to be intended? And you might find it another area to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
No, so good. Nick, let's wrap it up there for episode number 13 of the Coach's Corner. We've spoken a lot about how to get your loved ones involved into fitness, maybe facilitating, not dictating, and then talking about what makes a good exercise or a good choice of an exercise.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this episode, let us know, and we'll catch you next week for episode number 14.
Yeehaw. See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like the show, share it with a friend.
Or leave us a review on iTunes to spread the good word. See you next time.